Good evening. Welcome to Christ the King. I'm here with Principal Joe Silveira from our school here in the beautiful backyard of the rectory here. My name is Jennifer Bennett. I'm a member of the music ministry here at Christ the King. I've been a parishioner for about 11 years now, and I've got two children who are going into the 5th grade and 2nd grade here at CTK. So I'm here today to have a conversation with Joe about the upcoming school year and all the wonderful things and different things it's going to bring. So I guess to start things off, would love to hear what you're most excited about as we roll into the new year.
Thank you first off, Jennifer and Father Paulson as well for having me here. I'm truly honored. Gosh, we're on the precipice of a whole new year with our theme being that of living the gospel. And I truly believe that we have this gift each day to walk in Jesus' footsteps. But honestly, where my excitement lies for the present moment is knowing that our faculty and staff is returning tomorrow as we prepare for the amazing start and the commencement of receiving our parents and students. I often said in my career that the lungs of the institution fill up and we have purpose and renewed spirit and energy when our families and children return. And this year especially too, with our true goal being that of health, well-being, and safety during these most unique times. Our hearts will rest, even though it will be different, seeing our children's faces, their wonderful thoughts, the light in their eyes, just really the challenge and the nurture and the reciprocity of any new year. And I just want to thank everyone from a 360 perspective for staying committed, offering their voices and their great strategies and ideas as we had prepared to certainly be on site with class size reduction and all the other aspects, but had a pivot after Governor Newsom's speech toward the off-site distance learning. But it is markedly different than it was last spring when we had to make that sudden decision on March 17th. So I'm really pleased to our senior leadership team, to Father Paulson, a fellow educator who truly gets it. I mean, here is a pastor that has a doctoral degree from USF in education and has really been a lighthouse and a rock to our present place.
Yep.
So I'm fired up. I'm
Yep.
excited. It's going to be awesome.
So what have you and the teachers been doing over the summer or even in the last month since you knew that we were going to be going into this totally remote environment to prepare for it would be interesting to get a little bit insight
Excellent.
into some of what you've been up to for the last few weeks.
Wonderful. So certainly in order to activate plans, again, all the stakeholders' voices are important. So there's been certainly a lot of communication. Things such as looming or writing, or a lot of Zoom meetings, more on a smaller basis, just trying to activate voice, look at shadows, get ideas, sort of frame the year in a very unique way. Our teachers, as an example, have been working on professional development. As you know, we now have a standardized learning platform. So the school really is triangulated, K3, 4, 5, 6, 8. But from an early primary perspective, we have Seesaw, K3, and then 4th through 8th grade Google Classroom. But within that context, we have a platform called Freckle that is really mathematics and language arts driven, but it aligns with our Star Renaissance testing from a norm reference standpoint. Our teachers, certainly with our Promethean boards being new, are going to be trained on that tool as a device as well. And so, you know, the day-to-day planning to launch such a new plan can't be a make-o paint job. It's got to, very intricate, very composite, almost like a diesel engine. So in that vein, from a parent standpoint, heavy lifting here within the institution, the front office staff has been working long hours tirelessly as well, and certainly the senior leadership team, Katie Thornberry, Jean Busey, all of our teachers and assistants have had a voice too. I think back to our surveys to our parents, lots of phone calls, emails, meetings on site, meetings off site to really get some clarity and purpose as we enter into this,
Yeah.
amazing opportunity to grow and learn. But there's so much more to share, but certainly a lot of planning, a lot of professional development, a lot of flexibility and adaptability. I think those two words will be cornerstone this year as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been the theme for the last few months on a lot of levels, right?
Right,
For all
right.
of us. So, one of the things as a member of the parish and the school community that I love about Christ the King, and I know a lot of others do too, are the amazing traditions. And Father Paulson and his team have done such a wonderful job over the last few months of creating new traditions with the new, the challenges and the restrictions that we have with COVID. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, if you and the team have given any thought to some of the beautiful traditions we have in the school, things like, our Halloween and St. Boniface, and how we might, how we might tackle those a new and different way this year and keep those wonderful traditions alive.
That's a great question. I want to echo your sentiments. I think we need to be resourceful, inventive, resolved. Again, I think it needs to include many voices. We were talking ironically today about Halloween. I kid you not, in the front office, it came up as a question. And I immediately said, my goodness, as we did the end of the year in celebrating our families and students, we should have the kids come in cars and have maybe a non-traditional parade, but with their garb on and music blaring and us all celebrating them too. St. Boniface, we're always called to serve. I mean, we think of our mission statement of faith, knowledge, and service to our dear neighbor. And so absolutely, we would like to keep St. Boniface viable, helping folks surrounding our Thanksgiving time with our baskets and really what one hand does, the other hand shouldn't know about. But in that vein, there's so much. I mean, even when you think of fundraising, Mrs. Nudie had emailed me recently about Walk-a-Jogathon. And early on, I thought, my goodness, we may not be running on campus, perhaps at this point, but we could certainly run around our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Maybe run around, the Lafayette Reservoir with the GoFund aspect. There's just so many reserves and inventive things that we can do. And so, with our education being that of excellence and very robust, I certainly don't want to lose ground on what student council can do, what our home room teachers and room parents, and there's just this synergy that I know, even though we'll face some walls, things like auction, I would say let's go for it. Masses, certainly with Father allowing for Facebook masses, I would say that we keep those viable and thematically inclined. Even the Christmas program, and that's a tough one. I've seen the beautiful message from Australia with everyone singing elegantly. So Miss Halsey and Mrs. Bennett, I'm going to put you on an ad hoc committee. I think we go forward with the Christmas program, and we certainly had graduation last weekend where we were very responsible. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's honoring our students, honoring our parents, and being flexible, but also being intentional and rising up to the call of this unique time. And I'm simply calling it unique because we're beyond the challenge now. It's more, again, rising to this occasion and really realizing that life is a gift, that learning is a great gift too, and that we can do this and do it well.
That's great. So I've got a couple questions from the Facebook stream.
All right. Here we go. I'm going to adjust my chair. And
here we go. Get ready. So can you tell us a little bit about the new faculty this year? How many new teachers do we have? And can you just tell us a little bit about them?
Absolutely. I'd be honored to do so. In fact, I've been honored to, communicate that during our weekly Constant Contact newsletter. Gosh, we're so blessed in this vein. So Vicki Rubino has stepped up to become office manager. And with her position being availed and open, Jennifer Moran, one of our parents, to Jake and her husband Brent, had reached out to me early, and with democratic processes, we had an initial interview, and she was outstanding. And I have to tell you, from a front office perspective, she's come in with an esprit de corps and a team outlook that has just uplifted our office. Vicky's amazing. Demi's amazing. Jean's amazing. Katie, all the folks in the front office. So I wanted to mention Jennifer, Jen. And Now, as we go down the line, we'll start at kindergarten. We have two new assistants, Sarah Pastor. And Sarah and I go way back to our Chronolette days, and I know her big sister as well, wonderful family. But the cool part is Sarah's a graduate of our school. She went to Oregon State and finished her education very early. Waters went to Chronolette and has worked in the legal world, like myself and Marilee too, not anytime soon, but is yearning for the grandkids at some point. And I think a wonderful mom, but coming back into this setting will grant a lot of wisdom and grace in having children and raising children. So that's remarkable. Now, as we move up to second grade, we have Tori Bartles, and Father Paulson and I were blessed to be pastor and principal at St. Mary's Elementary when Tori was a student. Tori certainly went to Chronolette High School as well, and went on to Chapman University, where she majored in dance and minored in education, and was with our wonderful 8th grade teacher, Alyssa Bells, in Spain, and was at St. Raymond's, my old stomping grounds, and living proximally close, and with wonderful intentions of the heart and transition in mind, we were able to receive Tori. She's going to do great with the sacraments, wonderful with language arts. She's incredibly bright, but very down to earth. Her classroom is vibrant with the bulletin boards and the messages, but a very kind, graceful, wise spirit that I think will be very conducive to our school as well.
And she'll get to lead our children through First Communion
First
this year, which will be wonderful.
The sacredness of that, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, most recently, Mr. Whitty left us to St. Joe's in Alameda, and with staying measured and calm and prayerful, the hand of God presented us with a candidate. I want to thank Brad Moeller, who is our network engineer for the diocese and does outsource work for us here at school. He was our light that said, no worries, I know of a young man within the diocese who is assisting a school, but would be great for you folks. And so Matthew Medina joins us tomorrow. He was an assistant at Corpus Christi, incredibly bright young man, very industrious, full of positivity and great intentions of the heart. And so we're very honored to have him as well, and very pleased. And I'm going down the annuals of my mind as not to miss anyone at this point, because I won't sleep tonight if I've missed a new member. But I think we've covered.
Yeah.
Let me just think for one moment, if I may. Yeah, I think we're solid.
Okay. So, as we've alluded, this, this time has presented us with some challenges, and certainly we found ways around them. But, one of them has, probably been, there's been some changes in the enrollment in the school. And
Right.
So can you speak at all to how enrollment has been affected
Yeah, I'd be
by the
honored to
remote
do
learning?
that. Absolutely. So we ended the year at 314, perhaps the highest enrollment single school-wise in the diocese. I mean, certainly we have St. Isidore's double booked and Holy Rosary as well. We put in a preliminary budget at the April 30th date with an enrollment of 305. A little caveat, if I may, 100% registration and 100% commitment on our contracts. We've sort of vacillated around the 300, dipped down into the 290s, and most recently equalized to 300. Sadly, we had to release some staff members, but with good intentions and morality and good judgment and stewardship at this time. And so subsequently that sort of equalizes things too. But presently we're at 300. We, interestingly enough, Vicki and I, per the diocese, send in a monthly budget tracker. And so at 300, and with the opportunity, I think once we commence with our plan, that's rather stealth and I think well thought out, there it seems seemingly right now it's high interest as we commence school. So at 300 we can make this work, and we're all sort of dialed in and strapped in for the ride. Yeah.
Great. We did get a question. You mentioned this a little bit earlier. One of the teaching tools we're going to be using Freckle this year. So
Yes.
Someone had the question of whether we've used Freckle as a teaching tool before, and so I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about Freckle.
Yeah, we're certainly familiar with Freckle. We're familiar with Lexia and Membean, and the list goes on. Ironically, even prior to us adopting Freckle, and the cool part about Freckle is we're using our Title II funds, so state funds to mitigate the cost for that. From a diocesan perspective, And even just from an ongoing learning perspective, which is kind of quintessential to teaching, you're always in a learning mode, learning every day from the kids, from the families, and from the craft itself, not only theoretically but practically. I dove into Freckle, and what I really like about Freckle is, from a common core perspective with math and language arts. And by the way, another caveat, if I may, our education, in my opinion, is unparalleled. I think part of it is certainly our great parents and our students, but our wonderful faculty. We really do a great job with language arts and literacy, where we have 2 reading specialists with master's degrees and credentials, K3, and we triangulate a group of 36 to the 12, 12, 12 margin. So as an example, 12 with the kindergarten teacher and 2 assistants, 12 from the group with one of our reading specialists and beyond. And so literacy crosses the curriculum. And if we take that core emphasis and look at it clearly, what Freckle does is it's a calibrative learning tool, a modality or a platform, if you will, that takes students in their zone of proximal development and forces the bloom slightly on the upper end and provides a cushion, but allows for movement along the longitudinal path. And with it aligning, I don't want to get too educational jargonistic, but with it aligning to the norm reference testing, namely our STAR, which in an ideal year we provide 4 times a year. It really is a great framework or a support system for our academic school of excellence. I want to say something that I think is somewhat visionary. I'd like us futuristically to dig into our math program. It would be great someday with maybe a portable for club, because we're high numbers there, and utilizing it more during the day. I want to thank Father Paulson for the Father Joyce room. When we do return, those middle school kids who are teenagers, they'll commence at 8 a.m. and have algebra being taught at the commencement of the day. But I think that if you take something like Freckle and align it with the Common Core standards in our curriculum and how we design instruction, use different strategies and modalities for formative and summative assessment, it's only going to make our education far better and far stronger. But I want us to keep in mind that math perspective going forward, where I think we could do more to support our students going into high school, college, and beyond. And with my experience at the high school mathematically, I'm really excited to work with the advisory council, work with our parents and all the stakeholders in our community to design that fabric. But look at what we're doing. We're going, all subjects are important. In fact, our plan this year hasn't supplanted anything from a synchronous, asynchronous standpoint. Really pleased with that. But if you go whittle it down, it really is the mathematics and language arts that catapult the learning, well beyond. And yet we're integrative too. So again, I'm not sliding any of the subjects. Or
and to get back to Freckle, I love it. My second grader loves it. She will do those problems all day long so she can win the points to dress that little pig. There's like a little gamification thing in there too.
And a little plug for Katie Thornberry with our MEM being at the middle school level, that's now going down to the 5th grade level. It's a vocab sort of calibrative program as well that students compete on. And there's red ink. I mean, the list goes on of all the things that are out there.
So another question on the technical side, another one near and dear to my heart, are there any plans to provide training and technical support for the parents who might not be familiar with some of these platforms?
Well, you know what, there are. So as an example, on the 20th and 21st, we're having an orientation of sorts where students come in on signup.com. It'll certainly be in tomorrow's Constant Contact at 5 p.m. To launch next week. But what we found, and I want to thank Katie Thornberry for creating a repository, whether it's a webinar or the ability to seek office hours or work with the teacher one-on-one, because our teachers are very tech savvy as well. What we're going to try to create is a portal, a repository, as I said prior, where you can go in and at your own time have support, aids, and measures in place. We were so pleased March 13th, that Friday, to get our books out, get our devices out, and then prior to Easter, really dig in on the distance sustained learning aspect. Whereas now we're ahead of the curve, and we recognize too, like our young baby teachers of the students that are younger. There's a lot of heavy lifting at home with career and responding to all of that. The only thing where there's a slight faux pas, if you will, is with our new iPads, and we went out and we have one-to-one devices school-wide. With the transition of Chris and Matthew arriving tomorrow, and a bit of the impaction in our world today as far as like, Apple and all of those sources, our otter boxes, I'm calling them, with the protective gear of our iPads hasn't made its way. So parents, please take good care of those students as well. You won't be able to prop them up, but use Portuguese ingenuity to put a few books, however.
Yeah.
And but
don't use them on the hardwood
right,
floors. No, carpets only. Don't
but
drop
certainly
them.
this time around, we will have this wonderful area where you can dive in and have the FAQs and the rules of the road and the webinars and the quick links.
Yep.
And all of that posted to our
Yep.
website. So I'm really pleased with that result.
Here's another tech question for you, and one I know you have a great answer to because I've seen the schedule. How much screen time do you envision the students are going to be spending each day? I mean, how much time on Zoom and how much time in front of their
Excellent.
screens? And I'm sure there's been some thought given to
You
how
better
that's
believe
engineered.
it. Actually, this is a great question because from a health standards standpoint and a practitioner's standpoint, the internet right now is laden with articles about screen time because screen time extends beyond the school day with the gaming and the texting.
Really?
Yeah, for the adults as well, right? So there's a lot of nuances to that. But let me tee it up this way, if I may, and go back a step and then dive into that question. I love that question. At about March 20th, we were already envisioning class size reduction, compression of instructional minutes, priority standards, pouring into professional development, always keeping our education robust, but keeping this all in a calibrative sense practical and recognizing home where primary education exists, families being overburdened and stressed, and sort of equalizing it all. The schedule really entails synchronous and asynchronous aspects to learning. So 30 minutes max on Zoom. What a great instructional tool, but not great with 36 kids and 50 minutes. And so with the asynchronous time, we want the sustained silent reading. We want the inventive, creative time to ask questions, to complete work in a self-regulated way. But to answer your question succinctly, we have mitigated that and have really been cognizant of that screen time. What a great tool, but certainly not a great venue nor intake for the whole child learning emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, physically, and beyond.
Yeah. A question about religious faith formation. So how will our remote learning environment, so how will that affect, the religion classes, Friday Mass, the individual class masses, and,
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. That's a great question. So for us, religion is focal and foremost. It begins our day, faculty and staff in prayer. Oh my God, do I miss morning prayer with all of you in the morning? We will have Friday Mass. So Father Paulson and I will unite each Friday for Mass. I want to thank Father Paulson for opening the chapel last year and inviting singular classes in physically to that beautiful environment. And I still think we need the sacredness of a Zoom Mass or a Facebook Mass predicative to a class. I would say Zoom for Father Paulson. Mm-hmm. We don't want to cut any corners when it comes to our faith. My heart certainly rested this weekend when we honored our 8th graders, but my heart still is yearning for the sacramental aspects of our 2nd graders last year. And we could certainly blend them in to that 2nd, 3rd grade option next year with all of the protocols and safety measures. But I would say, just as we talked about fundraising and all of our traditions legacy-wise, we need to continue to provide the 2 retreats for our 8th graders. Sadly, they closed Caritas down for our 7th grade group, but it doesn't mean that we can't safeguard those funds from the Waka Jogathon and perhaps have 7th grade do that in the spring if things resume, or have 7th and 8th grade do that as 8th graders. Forward. That's whether it be masses or sacramental aspects, celebrations. I really want to sit down with the team, and particularly Teresa and gifted folks like yourself, to generate the celebrations, the sacraments. Religion will be taught throughout our school. Again, there's retreats.
Yeah.
There's so many aspects to
Yeah.
that are just, hallmark to Catholic
Yeah.
education. And if that falls out, then we're not doing
Yeah.
what we should be doing. That's a great
No,
question.
absolutely.
Dear to my heart.
Absolutely. So important to so many of us. Yeah. So this is a very serious question. A lot of chatter about this amongst the parents. How strict are you going to be about giving out those uniform violations when our kids show up for
I
homeroom
love
in their
it.
PJs?
I love it. Well, last year we were very practical about that. And maybe I should tee it up with a little of an attendance outlook as well. Last year the parents were sending attendance in, but with the synchronous aspects of Zoom, we now can see our students and
Yeah.
get our assistants involved and keep all that copacetic as well. But from a dress code perspective, well, first off, we've come a long ways as a school. We're far less draconian and restorative in nature. And honestly, in the world today, with so many challenges and so many hopeful successes, I do think we need to be pragmatic. But let me ground that and say that, what a wonderful way. And I know it's going to be a bilateral view. Half of our parents are going to go, yeah, I agree with Mr. Silveira, and the other half are going to go, oh my goodness, we need to be more practical about this. But I really believe that when we begin our day in prayer and we're dressed for the part, even when we go to Mass, as we alluded to earlier, with the formal dress aspects, I think when you come to school and you're dressed for the cause, then the learning matches that.
Yeah.
And so I would say last year, it was a little more like Little House on the Prairie, in some sense of the term. This year, I think we're back in our in our saddle and ready to enter the year. I mean, I just love seeing us all uniform and profiling our school and just that homogenized aspect of community.
Yeah.
That's one facet, but it really does show that unification each day.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, CYO. What's going on with CYO? Do we know?
With Mr. Lopez involved with us on our weekly 10 a.m. Tuesday meeting, we did get an edict from the diocese responsibly that said, at this point, there's going to be no CYO, and I get it. I mean, and something like that, too, it has to be more of an umbrella effect. I know there are certain programs like AAU and others that are doing certain things, but even from a PPE safety standpoint, we wouldn't want to put our community in any form of, mishap or well-being. That's focal for us. Now, I do think the social emotional component for me personally, that breaks my heart because learning is, we're in a bubble here, wonderful bubble. So I want to see our kids learn and grow and even fall figuratively and literally too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, maybe if we could find a distancing pattern that doesn't necessarily have to be basketball or even competition, but could be utilizing our wonderful lawn or getting our kids engaged. Again, I talked earlier about the whole child perspective. I know Thomas Aquinas would echo that, physical nourishment is just as important as spiritual and intellectual. So we want to be complicit and compliant and always following diocesan rulings, and particularly from a CDC standpoint. But if we've got the bandwidth, I think we should be inventive and do things to help our families as an offset. And I would say, and I don't want to offend the world, but I think that would be more of an intra matter, maybe just to our schools so we could manage it well.
Yep.
And certainly communicate to the diocese and multi-agencies as we did graduation to make for sure that it's above board and transparent and clearly stated.
Yep. So I've got a question here about measuring the success of remote learning. And I think this question is meant to address both, how as a school you're going to be able to measure whether you're hitting the benchmarks that kids should be getting in each of their grades and the core competencies, and then also how the children will be assessed on their performance in a remote environment.
Right. Excellent. Things will change, but not marketably so. So if we were to look at school on a day-to-day basis, we have what we call formative assessment, and it really drives instruction. I could go deeply inset to this, and I'm not. But as we get to unit testing and our trimesters and the 4 times a year of our Star Renaissance testing, that becomes more summative in nature and certainly reflects our reporting systems with the standards-based link to all of that.
Yep.
Honestly, last year, we were worried about, the integrity of testing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trusting our community, but not knowing who's in the room, what is the testing environment. You know what I say? We got to go for it. And I'll tell you, when I go into the classrooms clinically to observe, with feedback to the teachers and all, assessment can be anecdotal. So, when teachers and assistants are observing students engaging, well, let's go to Seesaw as an example, or even Google Classroom. Transparently so, assignments, tests, that assessment is really quick and is driving the whole cause. And so I would say, and by the way, the diocese did an extraordinary job. Michael Dreyfus-Pye, Jocelyn Pierre-Antoine, many other senior leaders on that level of creating a toolkit, if you will, on the curriculum instruction and assessment side that not only aligns with standards, but gives our teachers, along with their professional development and learning, the opportunity to be flexible, be dynamic, and try not to change the whole fulcrum of it all, but most importantly, dive in. It is what it is. Do our very best and make for sure that this education that is of excellence continues to move along the continuum and not fall. So we'll keep a close pulse, close internal controls. We're fit for that, but that's a great question.
Yeah.
I want to say more, but then we'd be here.
We got one last question, and then we need to wrap up because we've got Mass coming up.
Okay.
What advice do you have for all of the new families that are joining us here at CTK, both kindergarten families and families up through the grades? What advice would you give them in this
great,
interesting, unique environment that we find ourselves?
What a wonderful question. The greatest advice I would give you is be yourself. Kindergarten parents, I sat with all of you, and some of you Zooming toward the end, as you have come into our community. A lot of you parishioners, but first-time parents, let me tell you, you have the greatest community I've known right here. Very vibrant, very healthy, very loving. I think to our ice cream social, and today would have been a wonderful evening for that. But my advice is be yourself. Lean on your mentor, parents. Our room mothers have done a great job eliciting that. Ask a lot of questions. Having raised 4 kids and doing this over 3 decades, just relax. We've got you. Even in these most unique pandemic times. Ken Willers, our associate superintendent that's now a principal in Georgia, said perfectly that all of the questions for us all, we all have, are right here within our community. If something's broken, there's someone to help us. If we need to be sort of guided and stewarded in the right direction, there's someone there to speak to you. And I would say, be yourselves, ask a lot of questions, enjoy this journey. I mean, it's such a transformative journey for us all. The learning is well beyond the books. The agape, the traditions, the philosophies, goodness, from Father Joyce to Father Paulson to our parents to our faculty and staff. I mean, where do you get a teacher that's been here 40 plus years and Mrs. Seiler, who's coming back for the next 15 years?
I hope so.
And it's just awesome. So that's my advice. Be yourself, ask a lot of questions, and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think that's a wonderful way to wrap up. Thank you, Mr. Silveira.
Thank you. Thank you, Father Paulson. Thank you, Jennifer. God bless you both. Yeah, thank you.